Hi, I'm Mark, and like to talk about UK politics and, yes, Brexit from an outside view. Although I do know the UK from the inside as well, so don't worry. At the time, he had not been in office for 48 hours when the new Prime Minister announced the end of the controversial Rwanda deal. You heard from me about that. And meanwhile, the new Home Secretary is busy working on a spy plan to catch the traffickers on the English Channel. And the Chancellor of the Exchequer has announced the reintroduction of housing regulations. The Health Secretary has sat down with the junior doctors who have been holding the longest strike in the history of the NHS for 20 months. And the new Foreign Secretary has already flown to continental Europe to mend relations with the EU. News about the Prime Minister's projects, plans and programs has been pouring in every hour this week, and they probably want to prove to the country that they are serious about their promise to lead the country out of the crisis. At least the starting position of the new Labour government would be consistent with this. Governments make decisions in the interests of the entire people when they also embody this. And the new cabinet is more female, more educated, more down to earth, and therefore more representative than ever. 11 of the 25 ministers are women, and for the first time Rachel Reeves is also the Chancellor of the Exchequer or Finance Minister, who has been appointed to the post of Deputy Prime Minister. And at the same time, according to the NGO Sutton Trust, 90% of the ministers attended a public comprehensive school. Only Keir Starmer went to a partly private grammar school, and Transport Minister Louise Haigh attended a private girls' school. By comparison, under Rishi Sunak, 2/3 of the ministers were private school graduates. But who are the new ministers? Well, I have the 6 most important people in the new cabinet for you in this video today. Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, is the first one, and it was a long road for the British woman who dropped out of school at the age of 16 while heavily pregnant. She grew up in a small council flat in the north of England where there were no books because her mother could neither read nor write. But the now 44-year-old did not let herself be dissuaded from her path. After the birth of her son, she attended night school, studied sign language and social work. In her job as a social worker, she was soon hired as a trade unionist. "I don't let myself be bossed around and I'm quick-witted," is what she says. And the latter is a quality that sometimes get her into trouble. For example, when she described the Tories as a bunch of scum, but for which her fans appreciate her. And in 2015, she became the first female MP in her constituency. And today, she's one of the most powerful women in the country. Then we have Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. What people call her the thoughtful. She's more feminine, more educated. No, she's not more feminine. She's bringing more femininity to the cabinet as well. She's serious, determined, and thoughtful. That's how Rachel Reeves is often described. And one presenter even called her a snooze. But as finance minister, whose support to sort out the country's disastrous debt, there are hardly any better qualities. And her path to becoming Chancellor of the Exchequer seemed almost inevitable. As a child, her sister Ellie told the BBC, Rachel always saved her pocket money. And at 14, she was an English chess champion. At 17, when her school library had to make way for a classroom due to lack of money, she joined the Labour Party. And when she, like Rishi Sunak, was offered a lucrative job at financial giant Goldman Sachs after university, she, unlike Sunak, turned it down. She became an economist at the Bank of England instead. And then we have Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary. Hardly any issue has shaped the British election campaign as much as immigration, and so Yvette Cooper is particularly in focus as the new Home Secretary. The 55-year-old now wants to turn Stop the Boats into Break the Gangs, and if anyone can do that, it's the Scottish-born woman. There is no one who doesn't like Yvette, said Harriet Harman, the former Speaker of the House of Commons, once about her. She doesn't make anyone feel like a rival, she said. And her popularity is so high that she was offered the party leadership in 2010. But she declined for pragmatic reasons. I'll probably be in politics for another 25 years, but I'll only be reading bedtime stories to my children for the next 2 or 3 years, she said at the time. And 15 years later, the time has come for politics. And then we have David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. In the future, David Lammy will have to mince his words more often. In 2018, when then US President Donald Trump visited Britain, Lammy wrote, "Trump is not only a misogynistic, neo-Nazi sympathizing sociopath, he's also a profound threat to the international order." And so there were some rumors beforehand that Keir Starmer might not appoint the 51-year-old. But ultimately, Lammy's commitment to fighting social and racial injustice was convincing. Perhaps his friendship with Barack Obama, who Lammy met at Harvard University, helped a bit, or the goodwill of the former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair. Lammy had already served under him as a junior minister. And then we have Shabana Mahmood, the Minister of Justice. The former lawyer and the new Minister of Justice, Shabana Mahmood, had one of the toughest starts in office. In May, she had railed against the Tory government for releasing prisoners early. Now she had to announce the same measures because British prisons are overcrowded. I talked about this week. Keir Starmer brought the 43-year-old Muslim into his core team last year as Labour's justice spokesperson. She's considered his confidant and yet has received criticism from her own ranks, for example, when she campaigned for age-appropriate and religiously appropriate treatment of LGBTQ issues in schools. Accusations also came from both sides in the Israel-Palestine war. She was threatened so severely that armed police had to be at her side during the election campaign. And then we have Wes Streeting, the health minister. His grandfather was an armed burglar, the mother was born behind bars, and he himself grew up with 5 siblings. But then, an excellent certificate at school, a history degree from an English elite university in Cambridge, and now a man who speaks publicly about his gay identity and his strong Christian faith. The life of Wes Streeting, England's new health minister, is as full of contrasts as it is fascinating. He sees himself as a champagne socialist who enjoys luxury and serves society, and as a kidney cancer survivor, he feels particularly strongly about the NHS. And his ideas for saving the health system are innovative, but his flirtation with private backers is also controversial. But hundreds of refugee and human rights organizations have also called on Prime Minister Keir Starmer to change Britain's migration policy and move away from the controversial and hostile approaches of the previous government. And this appeal comes as Starmer celebrates his first full day as Prime Minister and confirms the end of the Rwandan deportation program, criticizing it as a gimmick that was dead and buried before it began. In an open letter to The Guardian, 300 civil society organizations and 534 individuals working with migrants have laid out a detailed plan for asylum reform. The letter criticizes the current policy as fundamentally flawed and proposes 9 key demands to herald change in one of Britain's most controversial policy areas. And the letter states, "We write to you as grassroots organizations and individuals with deep roots in our communities across the UK. We are proud to welcome people seeking safety. For years we have intervened to support people who have been victims of hostile policies and are being treated brutally. Now we are calling on your government to take a new approach, to protect people seeking safety rather than punishing them for political reasons." And their demands include several key changes. Restore the right to seek asylum in the UK under international law by repealing the Illegal Migration Act and the Nationality and Borders Act. Open safe routes for asylum seekers to get to the UK, and this includes providing visa pathways, enabling family reunification, and rebuilding refugee settlement programs. And house asylum seekers in communities, not camps, but closing institutional accommodations such as barracks, barges, hotels and hostels which have been accused of causing lasting harm and imposing significant costs on taxpayers. And restoring the right to work for asylum seekers within 6 months of their arrival so that they can build new lives in dignity and contribute economically. So this is an immediate hard one for Keir Starmer. And the housing part especially will be very problematic. Even the housing situation without refugees is quite severe in Britain. That's why they made quite a big promise on housing and building. And I think that is even one that will be the hardest to fulfill in that case. And I know that from my own perspective here, where we have a very dense housing market in my hometown. It's just because so many people want to come here, and I talk about Germans as well. And we have a very problematic housing market here, despite building a lot. And so I can imagine how hard it will be for Starmer's government there. But if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.